Well, good evening, everybody. It's about 1 minute before 7, so I'm going to start exactly at 7 o'clock. Looks like we got about a third of the people that have registered so far. So I'll give everybody just another minute to get on board, and we'll get started. I'm sure that a lot of you have questions. I'm going to try to anticipate those answers and try to deliver some remarks tonight regarding some of the challenges we've been having. So if you could save, be sure to put all questions in the question and answer box, but I'm going to try to address those right at the end. I have a pretty straightforward program for you tonight. All right, it is 7 o'clock, so I'm not going to waste your time. I'm just going to get right into it. As a reminder, this is just a 30-minute meeting. We have a hard stop at 7:30, so I want to stay focused and go over what your child's going to be experiencing in the next two conferences. We're two conferences down, and we're moving on to the next two. So let's begin with an opening prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Oh my God, teach me to seek you. I cannot seek you unless you teach me, or find you unless you show yourself to me. Let me seek you in my desire. Let me desire you in my seeking. Let me find you by loving you. Let me love you when I find you. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. I was looking for a prayer that would fit, and I saw this one by Father John Sassani, who passed away just a little while ago. Great priest, and Marianne McLaughlin, both of them with the Archdiocese of Boston. That's a beautiful prayer. That's actually just part of it, but that was the best part. So tonight, again, what my purpose is to cover the different experiences that your candidate's gonna have in the next two conferences. We'll cover the conversation with yourself and God. We're going to talk about the conversation with your friends, and we're going to talk about the conversation with your parents. I know there's been some confusion. I was sick for way too long. Thank you if there's anyone here listening that sent me a very nice email wishing me well in my health. I am 100% healthy right now, thank God. And God has also been good to just erase those days that I was sick from my mind. But I'm back now and trying to catch up. So I know there were some challenges, and I'm going to try to address all those challenges as I go through this. So first off, in this particular session, we're going to talk about what's holding you back. The idea here is that the kids aren't used to this idea of having a relationship with God. They've spent maybe 8 years of CCD, religious education, learning about God, but now they're going to learn really what it's like to have a relationship with God. So we've got to get out of the way. What are those things that are holding you back? And that's what we're going to focus on here. So our objectives, the first one is to demonstrate that all paths are not equal and that there is such a thing as objective truth. We talked a little bit about that the last time, if you stayed for the deeper dive afterward. Our second objective is to teach the candidates how to recognize patterns of stinking thinking. It's a Matt Kelly phrase, and I'll go through what that means. It's it's right in the middle of this session, and it's incredibly important. The third objective is to help candidates recognize who and what is holding them back from living the incredible life God invites them to live. And I'll be pointing out to you a few of those things that may or may not be part of your child's experience. So this starts out with there are 3 videos in the first conference, 3 videos in the second. I'm just going to tell you briefly what's in them and give you an idea of the kind of questions that we're going to have your child reflecting on. The first video is called "What Are You Doing?" It's actually a very cute story about sibling rivalry from a Matt Kelly perspective. He talks about him and his brother Andrew when they were very young, and a problem that they had. And Matt Kelly decides to solve it on his own terms, shall we say. And his mother walks in on this and screams, "What are you doing?" And he says to all of us listening, we all need someone to say that to us now and then. God wants to say it to us. He sent us prophets. He sent us Jesus. Good friends will every once in a while kind of knock you upside the head and say, "Well, what are you doing?" It's time to take another look at your life. And he kind of tees up this whole idea. The video's probably about 6 or 7 minutes long, but the last minute is really where he gets to the meat of it. And we asked the kids, what is one idea from this video that you find most helpful? Hopefully they find it in that last minute and not just say, "Don't eat my brother's chocolate." That will be something that they'll be able to talk to you about. The second video is called The Quest for Happiness. So it's what is holding us back from becoming the best versions of ourselves. And the real simple point here, and one to keep in mind because this will be part of your conversation with your candidate, is what's the difference between pleasure and happiness? In watching this myself, I thought, you're right. The world has really gotten these two confused. And the simple definition is pleasure cannot be sustained beyond the activity producing it. So he says, if you want to, have an hour of happiness, eat something really delicious. But when you stop eating, it's over. So it's really a pleasure. So you can find pleasure in taking for 2 hours if you take a nap. You can find pleasure in an afternoon by shopping. You can find pleasure for an entire week by going on vacation. But that's not happiness. God wants you to be happy forever. So how do you do that? So he kind of gets this idea of don't fall for what the world tells you is what's going to make you happy. A new pair of Nikes and a better iPhone and all these other things, because those are just going to cause some pleasure while you're involved in those activities. So one of the questions that we asked the kids is, what is something you thought would make you happy, but in fact left you feeling empty, unhappy, miserable, used, deceived, or worse? We've all, bought the wrong thing, and it's been a big disappointment to us. So we're trying to get the kids to think of something that they thought would bring them pleasure, and in the end, it did not bring them any happiness. So but God is here to deliver that happiness and wants us to be happy forever and is willing to help us out. And additional sessions in this program will dig deeper into that. This big one on stinking thinking, this is the most important video in the whole thing, and this will be in the first conference. It's the last video in the first conference. The kids get very long explanations of these, but I think you can pretty much figure them out quickly, so I'm giving you just a bite of it. The first one's individualism, which is basically what's in it for me. It's a big thing in the world today. Everybody gets to be an individual, and individualism is awesome, and we all do what's best for us. Doesn't work out in the long run. Hedonism, if it feels good, do it. Big problem since the 60s. And minimalism. Didn't realize this one was as big of a plague until I started, learning about this through this program. But what's the least I can do? And maybe some of you are nodding your head going, "Oh, that's my kid." Yeah. That seems to be a plague in the teenage years. And finally, relativism. What's true for you may not be true for me. Again, we talked about this before. There are such truths that this is correct, but the problem in the world today is the world wants you to believe that all truths are this way. I hold up my hand and where's my hand and say, describe it. You're looking at something completely different than I'm looking at. So we can both talk about something and they're both true, but they're different perspectives. But there are such things as objective truths. And I've added to this program more than what Matthew Kelly had in there, especially since this is an area that I've worked in before with teenagers. And I think it's really important. So I gave them some more information on this. So we asked them the question, how is stinking thinking holding you back from the person God created you to be? I think this is a moment I can also point out that there's a hyperlink at the bottom of this page. You can click there and watch these videos yourself. The kids get these videos embedded into a form software that I've purchased for us, but you can go and watch them free, on that link. If any of you are on here that weren't on the last one, you're going to get this in an email. Everybody in Confirmation 1, every parent is going to get an email in 51 minutes with a copy of these slides. Then we get into the second conference, Hungry for the Truth. And Matt Kelly makes a great pitch for every person and every culture has questions about what is right and wrong. The way God answered the Israelites was the 10 Commandments. So he pretty much focuses on the 10 Commandments and uses an example of go watch the news. Pick a story, tell me which commandment got broken, because chances are, if it made the news, it's bad news, and bad news means somebody broke one of these commandments. There's lots of, murders and people lying and people committing adultery and coveting things that they shouldn't be coveting, and the news has a field day with that stuff. So one of the assignments, if you will, in this is give an example of a story on the news and tell me which one of the 10 Commandments was broken. So that way the kids can see that, we all know the difference between right and wrong. Some people might not be willing to admit it, but we do know. This video, 2.4, it's called This is Personal, is actually one of my favorites. It's an amazing story. Simple story of a boy who is lost on a mountain and makes a deal with a rattlesnake. The boy's lost and wants to be led off the mountain, and the snake says he'll do that. And the snake says, I'm hungry. And the boy says, well, I have food. If you take me off the mountain, I'll give you the food. But please don't bite me. So the snake promises not to bite the boy. So they get to the bottom of the mountain. The boy gives the food to the snake, and the snake bites him. And the boy lies there dying and asks the snake why he broke his promise. And the snake looks at him and says, you knew what I was when you picked me up. So the question to the kids is, what does the rattlesnake represent for you? I'm sure that all of your kids have hung around with the wrong person. That could be a rattlesnake. They got themselves involved in substance that they shouldn't have been involved in. They knew it was wrong. And in the end, these things do bite us. So he's setting this up for just stay away from things that you know aren't good for you. So what is it that sooner or later is going to turn on you and strike you down? And how would your life be better if you could walk away from that rattlesnake? I think this is a great exercise for the kids. I actually made them do an extra sentence on this one because I really want them to reflect on what are the things in their lives that sooner or later are going to bite them. So it's a good one. As I told you, the last video is always called Decision Point, same title every session. This one, he goes very quickly. It's a 2.5-minute video, goes through the story in the book of Judges where God chooses Gideon to go out and destroy idolatry and the altars to false gods. The Israelites had fallen into worship of false gods. And Gideon, as the book of Judges explains, makes very wise choices and leads the Israelites back from their fallen ways. And then he quickly says, okay, now we're in the modern time. The modern culture has a lot of false gods. Are you going to be able to tear down the altar the culture has built in your heart and welcome in the one true God? So one of the questions that I ask the kids here is, we have all gone looking for happiness in all the wrong places, fallen into stinking thinking, turned our backs on the truth, and been too proud to admit our wrongdoing. When was the last time this was you? If the kids are honest, God bless them. A lot of them might sugarcoat this one to avoid telling you the truth. But this is a very powerful question and a powerful story. And I hope the kids get the point on this. I think a lot of them do. I've been reading an awful lot of the submissions, And I would say most kids are doing a great job with it. Some are kind of just phoning it in, but some are really working at it, which I really appreciate. Um, so if there's anything that went wrong in the first two conferences, it was the conversation with your friends. I would say I came back from being sick, and I narrowed it down to probably about 170 emails from you all. And I would say 90% of them sounded like this. I never heard from my child's group leader. I don't know what group my child is in. When am I going to find out what group my child is in, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to right here fall on the sword. At least half of this problem was mine. I was able to contact the group leaders and tell them who the group was, and then I fell sick. So I was unable to get back out to the rest of everybody. And while I was lying on what felt like my deathbed, I was praying really hard that those wonderful small group leaders would pick up the ball and run with it. And to my great pleasure, many did. To my great disappointment, many did not. A lot of emails got lost in spam filters, I found. So parents never got the big email that said this is the group, so the kid never knew what to do. Please check spam filters. We're making you use one email address. If that email address is not working out for you, you got to contact me and change that one email address so that I can change it within the system. So it's so that all the forms, work properly. But yeah, I do know this is a big problem. So I am pledging this week, sometime this week, I am going to get out a copy for everybody to know. Here, you are the small group leader. Here are the people. You people, this is your small group leader. Here are all the other people in the group. Father Brian wanted me to send out the entire list. I think that's a violation of privacy, to send out the entire list of the entire 300 and some odd kids that are all registered and all the email addresses of all the parents. So I pushed back on that, but I am going to send out within the groups. It'll be a lot of emails. We have now 50 or so groups, almost 50 groups, I think, in the program. I'd say half of them functioned in the end and got it done, and the other half we're still having some problems. So I will also be sending a new document with answers to all the problems about conversation with friends. One of the ones that seemed to be very prevalent was people were trying to do this part before everything else. So they had no idea what they were supposed to talk about. Well, if you don't do the first part, the conversation with yourself and God, you can't get to this part. So you wouldn't have any idea of what was going on. So I think the kids got really excited about these Zoom groups I get to do in a Zoom group or whatever, and they tried to do it first. And it made no sense to them whatsoever. They were like, I could tell by the submissions. So please, as parents, you receive, if you were on, well, everybody got it, whether you were on the call or not. Last time, you got slides that look just like this, the same 4 smiling kids' faces. Prepare for your call. Every kid is supposed to look at those 2 bullets. I'm trying to limit it to 2 bullets. And think about these things. The first one for these guys is going to be, think of a time when you embraced one of the broken philosophies: individualism, hedonism, minimalism, relativism, the stinking thinking. When was the time that you did this? Every kid's got that story for probably all 4, but they only have to come up with one. If they're on the spot, Johnny, in the middle of the conversation with friends trying to come up with this, that's bad. So they need to look at this before they get on with their friends. So I noticed that even though I made this so that they followed along in a process, do the conversation with yourself and God, then you get to the conversation with friends, you prepare for your call, you do the call. After the call, then that's what they reflect on. And then they move on to the really important one about conversation with parents, which, if any of you have sent me an email on that, and I got an email from many of you on this, that it's going really, really well. I really appreciate that, because this was part that I thought has been missing from this program for quite some time. So I'm really excited that a lot of you are having really good conversations with your kids. It continues to work out. If your kid is having trouble, I got a lot of emails that said, what do they talk about? This slide right here, you have it. So this is it. It's the prepare for your call. That's what they're talking about. What is something courageous that you have done as a teenager? And then the second one is, if you had more courage, what would you do with it? These are all things that they don't have any problems having that conversation. That's an easy one for them. And then when they reflect, they're going to be, okay, which story did you hear that impacted you? So again, you're not answering the questions that are in prepare for your call. You're saying, okay, I had a conversation with my friends, and now I heard these, my friends, people that are in my grade here, they're talking about times when they had courage. This is what I think of that. Or what would they do with more courage? Wow, I hadn't thought of that. I really like that one. Yeah, I'm going to make that part of my thinking, So that's the kind of reaction that I'm just hoping that they'll have after a conversation. I know I saw one of the girls already has all she's a group leader and she's got them all scheduled for the rest of the year. Awesome, that's great. Hopefully a lot of groups can get close to that. But I'm going to hope to solve all the group problems over the next week or so. Because of my illness, and because of the confusion with this, none of these conferences are ending. They're all still open. I'll be sending out something about the first conference at the end of this week, kind of giving everybody about a week's notice to do something. One of the things that I think, if your child, I know there's some scheduling issues. I'm looking at the clock. If there's some scheduling issues where one person can't make it to a group, that's okay. The small group leaders are supposed to follow up afterward, or if it's your child that can't make it to the group, have them follow up with the small group leader and go, hey, what'd you guys talk about? You're just going to reflect on it, So do the best you can on it. When worse comes to worse, if this whole thing just completely falls apart for your child, have them find a friend or a sibling and have the conversation with them, and then reflect on the conversation. Even if that sibling or friend isn't in the confirmation program. It's really, really important for these kids to have these conversations. So do I care who they have it with? No. The reason we structured it all this way was to make sure that no kid ever fell through the cracks. Last year, they all got to pick friends, but at least the kids who never got picked, Roger could put them all in a group. I don't have that luxury. I'm not ever in front of these kids. So I'm doing this all electronically and it's a mess. So it takes an army to solve this problem, but I am so insistent that these kids get these really good conversations, not just with their friends, but with you. So this is the first one, and we all knew this was going to be the toughest part, and I'm not worried about it. I think over the next few weeks, everything's going to resolve. I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So I will get back to you. I will get more information. What else did I write down in here? I'm going to send you the updated list. A lot of people didn't know where to find the connections to these conferences. It's the same page it was for the schedule last year. So if you just go to our website, Religious Ed confirmation schedule, all the conferences are listed there. They just click them and they go right in. So I was surprised how many people didn't. It's like they didn't know that we had a website or something. So, but that's where every link. That's where there's a parent section on that, and you're going to get the link. This is being recorded, and you're going to see the recording of it up there, within the next day or so. And this is where you find everything, is on the confirmation-schedule on the St. Mary's page. I think I hit all those things. Okay, I want to. For those who have a child who is a small group leader, I did get a lot of questions, which I think I've now answered because I did send it back out. A lot of people couldn't find the form because small group leaders file a form just saying we had the meeting, this is when it happened, this is who attended, and this is when our next meeting is. Because it's really important to set the next meeting before you hang up. Otherwise, you're chasing people all over planet Earth trying to figure out when they can do the next meeting. While they're all there, get it done then. I'm also finding that I got a comment that everybody's keeping their cameras off. turn your camera on. You know what each other looks like. Who cares what your hair looks like? Just turn the camera on so you can look in each other's eyes and have an honest conversation. So anyway, now I'm getting a little offbeat. But anyway, the form is not on the website because it's only for small group leaders. So I did send every small group leader again that link so that they can get that form. All right. Now to the really important part before I hit my deadline here. I still have other things I want to say. This is the conversation with parents for the first conference. I gave you 3 to pick from. I hope you pick all 3, but please pick at least one. Describe a time when you wanted to do the right thing, but ended up doing the wrong thing. It'll probably be when you were a lot younger, but these are good examples for the kids to see that I really want to do the right thing. And this is what happened. I did the wrong thing. And this is why it was the wrong thing, because blah, 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 all happened and it went awry. And I should have listened to myself and done the right thing. This is what kids need to hear. Another one you could pick from is explain some of the things that make you happy. And I put this little note in here. Please be careful to use examples that aren't things of pleasure. So pleasure cannot be sustained beyond the activity producing it. So please talk about, I'm sure family is it makes you happy. Maybe, your life growing up, maybe, you married the right person, your church, God, a lot of these things just aren't activity based and do bring people a great deal of happiness. So please be able to mention those. And the third one is just tell your teen a story about a time you struggled with stinking thinking. So I gave you just another, if you wanted to just copy this piece of paper off, I put the stinking thinking ones on there so you could remember them. So that would be awesome. And then in the second conference, which isn't until November, but tell your teen about a time that you felt hungry for the truth. The age that they're in right now, they are all hungry for the truth. They are trying to decide what's true and what's BS. And that's the way you know it as well as I do, that's the way they're operating right now. So if they could hear from you a time that you felt hungry for the truth. First story that popped into my head is I was adopted. I met a biological sister of mine when I was 43 years old. She told me the story. She was raised by our biological mother with no religion whatsoever, but had a hunger for the truth. So in high school, she went to every single church that she could find until she finally found one. And to this day, the woman is amazingly religious and very active in her church and the whole bit. It worked out great for her. So that was the first thing I thought of when I heard this one. Another one you could do is explain a story on the news that really disturbs you and what commandment do you think is being broken. Help the kids understand the perspective. Everything they see on the news is up there to kind of annoy you. Because news has become entertainment rather than news. And then what are some of the things that you think our modern culture worships more than God? Money, sports, politics, individualism, television. I just picked a few, but the list goes on. He plays for Tampa Bay now, but it used to be Tom Brady. Anyway, and then if you want to look up the 10 Commandments, it appears twice in the Bible, if anyone didn't know that. And those are where you can look those up. All right. So closing remarks, just some reminders. Please encourage the teens to do the conversation with yourself and God as soon as possible, because if the kids start to get into their group things and they haven't finished that yet, they have no idea what to talk about. So they can't get to those other sections without finishing that section. Allow them privacy, because there are 2 opportunities in that for them to pray. And some kids feel better about praying if they're alone. Candidates don't have to finish everything in one sitting. We did have some challenges with the software. It does work. I've tested it over and over again, so I can't tell you what went wrong when all the work disappeared. But if it's the same browser on the same computer, it should store the information in the browser. Now, if you're using a really weird browser that perhaps I haven't tested, I use either Safari. I use a Mac, so I have Safari on a Mac. I've also done Google Chrome. It works for both of those. I understand Microsoft finally got their act together and came out with a decent browser. Maybe that one works, but I haven't tested it. The company in Australia that makes the form software, they swear to me that it works with all the browsers. So, but it has to be the same browser on the same computer, because all the information is stored on your computer in that browser. The other problem that people were having was when the kids enter your email address, people are getting stymied by the fact that if they move too fast, they don't realize you have to enter that email address twice. So the second line being blank doesn't match the first, and they're getting this cute little Australian message saying that the two emails don't match, or the email doesn't match, or something crazy like that. And everybody's thinking that they're not on a database. It's actually not testing a database. It just means that you didn't put it in twice. So please put the email in twice. I think most of you have figured that out, but and please bug them about conversation with friends until you get an answer. And conversation with parents takes place last, but please try to do it before the deadline, although I'm stretching out deadlines as long as I can. You'll get a notice from me that a deadline is going to be put on it before that. Remind them not to fall behind. I still have a lot of kids that just haven't shown up, haven't done anything. I don't know what it's about, but anyway. And encourage them to do the Deacon Stephen. I did get the kids in confirmation 1. I got a smattering of questions, not too many. They were all personal questions about me, so most of which I don't mind answering, but it really wasn't relevant. Confirmation 2 did a bang-up job. I got a ton of questions from them, so some of them personal, but a lot of them really good questions. So by all means, try to get them to do that. So I want to stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? Stop. I'll just hit exits. Stop sharing. There I am. Hi. I want to get to a couple of questions here. How do we know if our child has submitted the classwork? You get an email. You get an email. That's one of the beauties of using the one email address. As soon as that kid hits submit, you get an email. And please, 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 please read them. You'll see every question your child was asked. You'll see every answer they give. Most of the kids are doing a great job. Some of them are sandbagging it. And I can't go chasing every kid. I got 300 and some odd of them. So I'm asking you to do that. What are the different expectations for Catholic school children? In my head, there aren't any, because confirmation's not taught in a Catholic high school. But I know the tradition of this parish has been to let Catholic school kids out of some of this work. So I'm making it so that the conversation with yourself and God portion of it is optional, albeit I got to tell you, it takes less than 30 minutes. It's 3 hours between October and the end of December, of work for them. And it's nothing that they touch in a Catholic school. I don't know where that rule ever came from, but whatever. That's about the only difference. I do want them to do the conversation with their friends because I'm trying to build community at St. Mary's with all these kids, and to leave out the Catholic school kids leaves them out of the community, which is kind of ridiculous. They go to a Catholic school. Why aren't they more active in the parish? Well, they don't know anybody in the parish. Well, why not? Because they didn't participate in the confirmation program or any of the other religious ed. So it's just one of my hangups. So I apologize if I'm annoying anyone. We are one of those families where the spam folder got us. Yeah. If you've got a different email, would still like to be send me, we could, especially confirmation 1, we have a real need for small group leaders. So if you've got a bunch of your kids really want to be small group leaders, send it to me. I'll be more than happy to reorganize the whole thing so that I add more small group leaders. Because right now I've got like 9 kids per. And I would like to confirm that there are 2 small group Yes, there are 2 small group meetings per session. That's what Decision Point calls them, sessions. So I just gave you everything for session 2, but there are 2 conferences within that. So, because I don't want the kids overburdened by work. Kids don't do work they're overburdened by. So I split it all in half so that they have to do stuff. The save button is automatic if you use the same browser on the same computer. If it doesn't, I've only had a couple of people tell me it didn't work. So I think most people it's working okay. I know on my computer, I keep a bunch of answers in there so I can play around with it, and they just keep coming up all the time. It's embedded in there. So yeah, they should be able to just click out of it. You can try it by just putting the name in, put your name in and the email address, and then click out of the browser, and then ignite it up again, and it should still be there before you put in a ton of stuff. If it showed up on the first page, it'll show up on all of them. And could you send the small group leader form out again? We've not received. Oh yeah, I'm sending the whole group's thing. So yeah, if you've got kids that want to be a small group leader, send them to me ASAP, and then I'll just do it all at one big fell swoop, and I'll send it out to everybody. Those who have any issues logging on the small group meetings, yeah, she reached out to her leader. Just gets a black window. As I said before, I don't care how the kids meet. If they don't want to do it on Zoom, great. I know some of whatever the school uses, if they use Google Hangouts or whatever, there's no rules. I had a parent say, is it going to be at the same time all the time? No, that's up to the small group. I really, the bad news is, I've been tempted to say, okay, every Sunday at 3 o'clock, you all got to meet. But you know what? I'll lose half of you, because whatever time I pick is going to be rotten for 300 kids, or for half of the 300 kids. So to make it rotten for 1 or 2 kids within a small group, it makes it at least a little more tolerable. I can't wait for this virus to go away. This is just driving me crazy. I'm really going over here, and I do apologize. Anybody who wants to drop off can drop off. I am going to continue on. I'm going to cover the Bible from 50,000 feet. So like everything you always want to know about the Bible without opening it. But useful information. That's what I'm going to do in the deep dive. If everybody wants to hang on for that. If you're a Bible pro, you can knock off. Yeah, I see other people here. This little Q&A thing will disappear as soon as I shut this off. So please send me an email. Emails are permanent. I don't throw away emails. And so if you send that to me, I will definitely have it. Anybody who would like to be a small group leader, Jesus loves you, and so do I. We got confused about the conference too. Honestly, don't think the kids had to do 2 conferences. It's the session work. It's all one session. I just split it in half. That's what it is. And I'm just making it easier for them. I saw what they did last year. They spent 2 hours working on stuff, and no kid's we had a huge number of kids that couldn't even make up the work because it was just too much. So, it seems to ask Deacon Stephen the second conference is required. I may have forgotten to push that button. If they just say, no, thank you, it'll be fine. It's an automatic to make them answer it, but I have to uncheck that box to make it, they don't have to ask me any questions if they don't want to, but I hope they do. And not the form to become a leader, the form for attendance. Oh, I'll send you that. Send me, Andrew's awesome, by the way. He's got a great group going. Just send me an email saying, send me that form, and I'll put it right to that email and send it off to you. I'm down to, I think there's only 30 emails I haven't looked at yet. I came back literally with all the forms that came in. I had almost 400. So it's been kind of crazy. But anyway, thank you all for that. I really appreciate it. I'm going to very quickly, and from, this isn't even 30,000 feet. This is more like 50,000 feet. But I think this is kind of cool. I've used a lot of this material in the past. Deeper dive. We're gonna first off, Father Jack would like me to announce a correction to what I gave you last time. I had that the NABRE and the NRSV were my 2 favorites, which they are. But he wanted me to point out that the NABRE has footnotes and little things to help you understand the Bible more, whereas the NRSV does not, and that is true. And I neglected to mention that. If you do want to have a study Bible, I have just gotten an amazing recommendation. Robert Barron, Word on Fire, has done a new study Bible. It's sold out of its first printing in days. They've done a second printing, which is now available, and I'm hearing that it's the best Bible ever put together. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm looking forward to getting a copy myself. So this is deeper dive. If you guys are, you're like, okay, he's going to talk about the Bible, I'm going home, you can go home. If you want to stay around, I'm just going to hit this from a high level. There are 46 books of the Old Testament, but they fall into groups. If you're not too familiar with the Old Testament, the big 5 are the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. This is what the Jews call the Torah. It's the law. It's the Pentateuch, which means 5 books. It's the big stuff. And every other book that the Jews have ever used has to be in line with these first five. They are the scrolls that mean everything. They are a lot of the stories that you know. They're the Noah's Ark story, the Exodus into Egypt, Abraham, Isaac, Moses. All these are all in here. Genesis is fabulous to read. Exodus starts out great and then gets suddenly very boring. Leviticus and Numbers are only if you're having trouble sleeping, and Deuteronomy is just a recap of the other four. We have wisdom literature, the Psalms being the most important. There are 150 of them. We use them for lots of things, but there's also Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, and Job, which is a fabulous story of wisdom. And then we have the Book of Wisdom and the Book of Sirach. And you may have noticed that those are underlined. They are underlined because they do not appear in Protestant Bibles. In fact, if you now scan over this entire page, you will notice that there are 7 books that are underlined and 2 books that have additions that we as the Catholic Church have, and the Protestants do not include in their version of Daniel or Esther. How did this come about? Well, it started with Martin Luther, although the rumor that he cut them out of the Bible is false. But he was a Hebrew scholar. Most of these books and these editions were not written in Hebrew. The rest of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. Some of these books were written in Aramaic, but most of them were written in Greek. And they are from later times. They are from around 400 BC to, within the first 400 years before Jesus was born. So they were newer, if you will. So he decided to put them in a third section of the Bible called the Apocrypha. And when Martin Luther died, they were still in his Bible. But Henry VIII, it got the King James version, and it had the Apocrypha section, just like Martin Luther had created. And some printer needed to save money, so he cut it out. True story. It's kind of weird. But anyway, we ended up with the Protestants then producing the King James Bible, which is probably the most printed Bible in the English language, with only 39 books, missing a couple of editions. And the Catholic Church went, well, this is what Jesus read. And honest to God, what you're looking at here is what Jesus read. It started with an argument over Hebrew versus Greek, and got people with printing presses involved, and eventually we have 2 different Old Testaments. So the history of Israel, as you see there, is listed in all those books. Some of those are fascinating and full of tales of adventure and all sorts of great stuff. Joshua, Judges, which we mentioned tonight with the story of Gideon. Ruth is one of my favorites. I love Ruth. 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings are amazing. 1st and 2nd Chronicles has its highlights. All these books are amazing, and are well worth reading at some point. The prophetic books, though, this is where we really get into the good stuff, in terms of our understanding of the faith. Isaiah is considered the 5th gospel. Isaiah has great prophecies about Jesus. And if you see the first part of that, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Baruch, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel, they're called the major prophets, not because they're more important than the guys below that, but because those books are really big. Isaiah is 66 chapters long. And the minor prophets are just as important, every single one of them, but they're shorter, much shorter. A couple of them are only a couple chapters long. So Hosea and Amos are 2 of my favorites. If you really like the fictional side of things or the story side of things, you can read Jonah. Jonah's hysterical. I mean, this is the guy who got in the belly of the whale, et cetera, et cetera. But there's some genius in absolutely every one of those. It's just some really good stuff. Every Christian denomination has these same 27 books. There's no difference between what we believe, Protestants believe, et cetera, et cetera. This is it. This is the Christian Testament. This is the New Testament. It starts out with the 4 Gospels in the order of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. gets followed very quickly by Acts. Acts is actually Luke volume 2. Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, and they're volumes 1 and 2. They're stuck together. And if you read the end of Luke and the beginning of Acts, you'll see exactly what I mean. It continues on to the next story. Oh, by the way, I put this little funny Hebrew word down here is abrit, which is Hebrew for Hebrew. Most of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, except for that stuff that I mentioned was in Greek. This is all written in Greek. The entire New Testament was written in Greek, and that's Hellenica in Greek, which means Greek. So the next big section are the Pauline epistles. These are the epistles that were either absolutely positively written by Paul, or we're pretty sure they were written by Paul. So that's I squeezed them all into the list there, and you're going to have to go down to the 10,000-foot view to figure out which ones are which. We also have general epistles, which everyone's more than happy to attribute to James, Peter, John, and Jude. But we actually have no idea who wrote Hebrews. There's absolutely, scholars have been puzzled by that one for dog's ears. Doesn't ring a bell with the style of writing with anybody else. And then we have the apocalyptic literature of Revelation at the end. So I do train lectors, and I borrowed this slide from some of my lector training stuff. And some people get a little nervous looking at Hebrew and Greek words, and they're too difficult to pronounce the names of people and places and things like that. But it's actually a really easy trick. I'll show you here. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, as I mentioned. The New Testament was written in Greek, and our Bible's in English. Those little indents there all say the exact same thing. The first one says Boker Tov, which means good morning in Hebrew. And the next one down there says Kalimera, which is good morning in Greek. And then we have good morning. So you can tell they're different alphabets, different characters. The Hebrew reads from right to left, by the way. There's just no way to really translate directly on this. So when you see a word that comes from the Hebrew, it was copied phonetically. So just read it phonetically, and you can't go wrong. And if you say it like you mean it, no one will know the difference if you're a lector. So the Bible that we hear at Mass, I just want to point out, because a lot of people say, well, I read the Bible, I go to Mass, I hear the Bible. We read it all the time. Oh, okay, good. So there's evidence of lectionaries, which is what we read out of, and that little, if you've never looked inside of a lectionary, that's a photo of what it looks like inside the lectionary that we read at Mass. There's evidence of them being used back in the 2nd century. So basically the apostles had just died, and we have evidence that they were using lectionaries to present readings at Masses. The oldest one that we have in existence, though, is the 6th century. It's not very comprehensive. But this whole idea continued to evolve. And after a while, we were using the same tried and true books. As I'm sure you're aware, there were plenty of books that did not make it to the Bible, and they fell off for the right reasons. I wrote a master's thesis on this. I won't get into all the gory details, but it's suffice to say that the ones that are there for a reason. And this continued to evolve throughout the Middle Ages until Martin Luther came along and started screaming, yelling, and forced the Council of Trent, Catholic Church Council of Trent, to establish which books were in the Bible and which ones are we going to use during Mass. So they established what's called a one-year cycle. So there were certain readings that were used throughout, in January, February, March, April, different weeks, different Sundays. That changed in 1962. Vatican II established a 3-year Sunday cycle. And so in cycle A, they're A, B, and C, we hear mostly Matthew. Cycle B, we hear mostly Mark. Cycle C, we hear mostly Luke. John, we hear every year at Easter, and we hear it at other special occasions. So John doesn't get a special year, but John's used all the time. John is the most theologically pristine of the 4 Gospels. If you want to know what year it is, and you can do math in your head, if you divide the year by 3 and it turns out exact, then that's year C. So that would have been 2019. This is 2020. So what comes after C? A, all over again. So yes, we're just finishing up the year of Matthew, and we are about to start my favorite, the year of Mark, at Advent. So here's one to surprise you, though. If you think you've got enough Bible by going to Mass, over a 3-year cycle of Sunday Masses, you would read a whopping 3.7% of the Old Testament, plus Psalms. We use Psalms constantly. There's only like 3-4 Psalms that we don't use. Most of them are used heavily. But if you exclude Psalms, we only use 3.7% of the Old Testament on Sundays. And you'll only hear 40.8% of the New Testament. That's if you go every week. If you add weekday Masses, if you're an overachiever and go to Mass every day of your life, the weekday Masses follow a 2-year cycle, a year 1, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2. You'll get a whopping 13.5% of the Old Testament, plus those Psalms, and 71.5% of the New Testament. So there's a lot of Bible that if you don't read it yourself, you're missing out on. So for anyone who's interested, I would say there are 3 different ways that you could approach the Bible to do a little more reading of it. The first one is there are readings of the day. So those same ones from Sundays and, whatever reading is assigned. If you want to hit the 40.8% on Sundays or the 71.5% on every day of the week, you can go to the USCCB, bible.usccb.org website and get them there. Or you can actually subscribe and they'll send you an email with the reading of the day. It's pretty spiffy. And then you'll catch up on all the Masses you missed, so to speak. You can get those, which is great. If you want to be a super high achiever, I've never done this. I want to do this someday in my life, but I haven't done it yet because I don't have the bandwidth, as I'm sure you parents don't have much bandwidth either. But go to that URL there. And I like it because it's Catholic. It's not, there are a ton of Protestant ones out there, but the idea is you'll be able to read the entire Bible in 1 year. What I also like about it is it doesn't start at the beginning. Don't ever read the Bible from the first page to the last. You'll get lost as soon as you hit Leviticus. You definitely want to. It's structured in such a way as to really keep your attention and get you the good stuff and sprinkle in the boring stuff with it. And it starts in December, so you got a whole month to think about this. And then the third one, which if you're a real neophyte and you really haven't picked up that Bible in a really long time and you want to just put your toe in the water to see how it feels, I say let the Holy Spirit guide you. Pick a Bible, open it up, just go to the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let your fingers fall where the Spirit leads you. Look down and read a paragraph. See where the Spirit takes you on that. If you do that a few times and you really like it, go to the next section in the New Testament. Go to those New Testament letters, the ones from Paul, maybe Hebrews. Hebrews is brilliant. We just don't know who wrote it. And I think it's just you'll be amazed. And then now you're addicted. You got to go for Isaiah. You got to go poking around in Isaiah. When you get to Isaiah chapter 49 to 49 to 50, you get these prophecies of Jesus that are just absolutely amazing. The Pentateuch is the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Stick with Genesis and Leviticus, first part of Genesis, or Genesis and Exodus rather, first part of Exodus. Look through some of those minor prophets, amazing stuff. It's really good. So these are just some of my helpful hints. I spoke nice and fast, and I finished up early. Let me see if I can go back and see if anyone's still with me or what we've got here. Oh God, I still have people with me. You're awesome. Yeah, that was from somebody there. So yeah, thank you all very much for sticking with me and paying attention to it. I'm going to continue to do this because I know a few people really like it. I don't know what the topic will be next time, but November 23rd, I think it's the week before Thanksgiving. I'm going to have another one of these, and I'll cover session 3, for you. And then we're done for the first half of the year. And then we'll start again in 2021, which, dear God, better be virus free for at least a good chunk of it. So thank you all again. God bless you. And send me a, yeah, exactly. Please send me an email with anything. I sometimes it takes me a long time to get back to people because I just get swamped with them, but I don't throw them out. So I will get back to you. And please let me know what you're thinking and if I can help in any way possible. All right. All right. God bless. Take care. Good night.